By the time we did this massive post-production rewrite, we'd already shot all the film, so we were limited in our rewrite to what we had already shot. This is a really interesting problem most writers don't get the chance to tackle. It's kind of a joint effort between the writer and the editor, so we'll look more closely at this in the training series on editing, but this whole process was just fascinating to me. One of the motifs that we set up early on is that of repeated elements. This is one of those things that was super fun to write, but because the film played with time in kind of a confusing way, I'm not sure if it was as fun or even clear to the audience. For example, in the beginning, we see the scene with the townspeople and the preacher also. Tayani obviously has a cart for some reason, but unlike the original version of the script, the cart doesn't make any sense. Now, I love when storytellers do this. I remember in season 2 of the TV show Breaking Bad, they kept starting episodes with this creepy pink teddy bear in a pool. It's totally random. And then the show would just play out as normal without explaining anything about the bear. Because of the rule of Chekhov's gun that we discussed earlier, you know that this little bear is going to mean something. And later, when you find out what that bear stuff was all about, there's this fun rush of insight because you learned something new. So we were going for something a little like that with this cart, and with the other shots also that we showed twice. When we see the cart again later, and we see it tip out and realize that Cordelia was in it the whole time, we now get the cart. We now understand it. To a lesser extent, this was also the case with the shot of the girls fleeing, where we see them running from what we think is sickness and sick people, but then we realize that they're actually running from townspeople and the fanatics that are coming after them. When writing a film, you want the conflict to escalate. And while we didn't do a great job with conflict overall, this particular shot has a much greater element of danger when we see it the second time because we realize that they're actually being pursued by guys with weapons and fire. The breaking up of the sick scene in the rewrite was kind of fun too. We first see the sick boy as we learn about the sickness. Later, we see the rest of this shot and realize that this is actually a believer in the assurance who is pregnant and obviously concerned about the future of the baby she's carrying. I love this reveal, and I think there's probably too much going on in this one shot to pick up on all that it implies if you were just to see it once. And of course, splitting these scenes up allowed us to reveal a lot of stuff to the audience, such as Cordelia being hidden, and the preacher knowing and preaching about a child, and Cordelia hearing herself being preached about. And these quick shots can still have meaning because we have a frame of reference for them. We've seen these environments before. But perhaps the biggest repurposing of shots that we did was with the council. In the original script, Tayani and Cordelia were brought before the town council after being discovered, and the town gathered to see what would be done about the child. But this scene was too much info in the new version. It's too many characters, and it really just didn't fit. So we're going to cut it. But we then realized that it's important to show people believing in the assurance. So we took out a couple lines from Mark Holland's speech, we edited Cordelia out of the scene entirely and removed any shots where Mark Holland was speaking directly to Tayani. We changed the voiceover, and all of this made it seem like Tayani was just kind of going to church. The fact that there were a lot of believers is an important part of Cordelia wrestling with whether or not to believe. So being able to repurpose this footage as a church was kind of awesome. Again, this isn't something that writers are probably asked to do very often, this idea of taking footage and then retelling a story with it. But it's still writing, just with a few more limitations. I actually really enjoyed this process, and it was great to feel like the movie I wasn't happy with was still salvageable to some degree, with a little effort and creativity.